Big Ed Barnum on mouth trumpet. That hurt. Uh-oh, I'm not muted somewhere. Here we go. Mute that. There we go. We're going to go in 1 minute. 1 minute. I think. I hope.
That was a tune originally recorded by Bix Beiderbecke from his last.
Hi, Adjective Beaver. Hi, Randy Knickers. Hi, Amy Adams. Hi, that one black guy. Or as I like to call it, the Cool Club. Cool Club. Rated R. What? Sorry, I just heard one of the earlier songs was called I Want a Little Girl. All right. We're getting it started off in classic Barnum fashion with something moderately inappropriate and just a tiny bit creepy.
Support for Keene HD Jazz Radio comes from our members. Thank you. And from Mount Hood Community College, helping transform.
Howdy, folks. Big Ed Barnum here from Big Ed Barnum's Bauble Barn and Garden and Barnum Book Club. I don't know why I got the shakes. I don't really have the shakes. I was just doing that for dramatic affect. I like to mispronounce words sometimes, for dramatic affect. Howdy. Yes, I did get a haircut yesterday. Hoo-wee. Somebody's probably saying, I hope you kept the receipt so you can take it back. But yes, I got a haircut yesterday. I was walking down the street and I was like, why is my scalp all itchy? And it's like, well, I've let my hair grow so long that, there's little tiny nits and little other insects. And, when the birds, I was trying to come up with crow or raven. I don't know the difference between a crow and raven. I know one's bigger, one's smaller, and they both kind of like to argue with one another. But when they start making passes at your hair to get little insects and worms and stuff out of your hair, it's time to get a haircut, or it's just time to practice some sensible hygiene. I don't know. So yes, haircut acquired. We still might get haircuts on the June 8 5-year anniversary stream, which I've pitched enough, but I won't belabor today's business with talk of that, because I'm sure you folks have heard enough about it. So it is Sunday. It's 10 a.m. here on the, I almost said East Coast again. I always do that. I lived a vast majority of my life. Yeah, I've lived 2/3 of my life on the East Coast. The last third of it, well, hopefully not just the last third of it. Well, I don't know how fractions work when you're choosing a fixed point in time and then saying, well, I hope I don't die next week. I hope I got another, on my dad's biological clock, I've only got about 1.5 years to live. On my mother's biological clock, I got another 23, 24 years to live. So I'm hoping I fall somewhere on the further end of that. I'll shut up now, talking about morbid stuff. People dying. Unless that's what you guys want to talk about on Sunday morning. I was gonna see how long I could hold that pose with anyway. Thanks for the host, Adjective. I was babbling about I'm out of breath. For some reason, I ran myself out of breath babbling. And I don't know why I'm tugging on myself like I'm the mayor of a small town, like, yes, well, the citizens are tired of not having enough parking when they go to Faye's fantastic antique shop. Don't do that, adjective. I think everything's working at the moment, so don't refresh any browsers, because it's all a delicate patchwork of chewing gum and horse shit in here. Chewing gum and horse shit. That's the name. I gotta write that down. Chewing gum. It's gonna take me a minute because I'm literally writing it down. I'm not just doing a whimsical little thing. Chewing gum and horse shit. Colon, a life in Big Ed's shed. Okay, the subtitle there I did kind of scribble a little bit. The stool seems quite high. Well, it could be because I've got a nice little comfortable, I would say pillow, but it's more like just a sack with some compressed fluff in it. Also, the camera angle might be tilted up or down. So, mic check. I'm sorry. I bring you all here, and then I just clown around. Yeah, it's definitely comfortable. Mic check number 2. Hey folks, it is the 4th Sunday in which I'd actually mentally checked that. It is the 4th Sunday of Barnham Book Club. It was my New Year's resolution to do a book club every Sunday morning in 2019. And of course, missed the first week because I was sick. Actually, I think I may have missed the second week, but I don't remember. And I'm not going to rehash the entire 90-minute conversation from last week to arrive at why we're reading Watchmen. But let's just say I wanted something that we could all share that's like epic in scope, but not going to require people to read 2 to 3 hours a night, every night, just to get through the material. So, Watchmen, Chapter 1. A long time ago so we are going to be looking at Watchmen over the next 12 weeks. I realized when I put the schedule out, April 13 or 20, I know April 20, I think even though April 20 and 21 I'm going to be in Los Angeles, and it's possible I might be in Los Angeles the 14th of April. So I don't quite know how those dates are going to play. I could try to stream from LA, but the infrastructure would be quite different. I don't know. It's 10, 11 weeks away. We will figure it out. Figure out something then. So I don't quite know how to get started other than to say, if you do not have a copy of Watchmen and you would like to acquire a copy, the easiest way to do that is, hop on a place like pals.com. It might be Pals. No, it's just Pals. Palsbooks.com, and, just order it from there. Or, if you're in a hurry and you want to help little Jeff Bezos out, he's the little guy, little entrepreneur, little Jeff Bezos. You could go to Amazon and you could probably have a copy of Watchmen in your hands tomorrow. We're reading the Absolute Watchmen, which is a large format thing. You could get the annotated Watchmen, which has a lot of stuff. I've not looked at it because I wanted to arrive at stuff on my own and as a group here as we read through this stuff. Or you could get, I think the cheapest version you could get is probably $8.99, $9.99, which has all 12 chapters in it. If you want something to tide you over, a phrase my mother always used to say, you could go to, I don't know if it's Scribd or Scribed, but you could get a PDF copy of it there. It's the full thing. If you're trying to read it, I was just looking at it on my laptop here. It's not the best way to do it, but you could definitely start reading it. You could read the whole thing over there on Scribd or Scribed. If you want to join Scribed, which I think there's a 30-day free trial, you could literally download it. I don't know if Alan Moore gets any money from the sales of Watchmen. I think Dave Gibbons does. We'll talk about all that weirdness later on, but if Alan Moore is getting money, I don't think there's a difference between the edition I have here. Let me scroll to the end. The edition I have has artwork and whatnot. Can I just go to page 4? Let's try 400 here. It looks like the version on Scribed, I'm just going to say Scribed, is just the story. The version I have has renderings and stuff, concept, like Ozymandias. There's a biography of Ozymandias here with, he's young, 37, will live to 150. Just notes that Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, and those guys did. Let's see what else is in here. There's Alan Moore's thoughts on Watchmen. 1988 is when this was written. I have a feeling Alan Moore's thoughts on Watchmen have changed a little bit, or at least the treatment of his material has changed over the last 30 years. But that's the only difference between the version I have and what's on Scribed, is that there's some what you would call pre-production material in the back. Otherwise, it looks to be the same. The annotated version that I haven't looked at, I'm not jonesing to spend another $27 to get another version of Watchmen. But the annotated version apparently has 30 years of, everybody from pop culture folks to academics. Sometimes they're the same person. Talking about the influence and impact of Watchmen and what Alan Moore is trying to do. I might get that. I might wait a little closer to the end. What I don't want to do is read a bunch of annotated stuff that is driving me to things, whether it's academic resources or influence, other books, before I've had a chance, and we've had a chance, to sort of connect some of those things ourselves. And some of that, an example of that will be coming up a little later when we talk about Mo Vernon, of Vernon's Garage, which is in the fake memoir at the end of chapter 1 that Hollis Mason writes. Actually, I kind of want to go ahead and talk about that now, but I kind of feel like that's something special for the end of the episode. Also, something, I don't know when to do this. I went to an auction last weekend, and I picked up, I go to auctions all the time, and I found in Portland in the 90s, there was a, I don't want to say superhero, I don't want to say hero, I don't want to say vigilante. There was a, I'll say masked character known as Tin Horn in Portland who kept journals. I managed to acquire, this is actually, he was pretty prolific. This is about 18 months. Actually, it might be 1 month per thing there. Actually, this is about 20 some odd. I managed to score at an estate sale. I don't know how these ended up there, but I managed to score Tin Horn's journals, and I'm going to read an excerpt from one of those a little later. And it's pretty interesting. If you are a right-wing sort of everything in the world is black and white to you, you're a moral absolutist. You see the world in black and white. There's no shades of gray. Apparently, you like to rage journal a lot, especially. I'm making a joke about Rorschach in Watchmen. I have no idea if I need to set up the context of these jokes. I have no idea. I have no idea how to run a book club. I don't know how to do it. Anyway, so those are a couple of things. I already have to pee. If I were if I were a superhero, I would either be the peer, which would look like peer, the peester, or I might just be the waddler because I have like a funny, shuffling kind of walk. Anyway, chapter 1 of Watchmen is titled, is it At Night, All the Agents? What is the name of this thing? Why don't I just look? I think it's At Night, All the Agents, which is a tiny little fragment of a Bob Dylan song. At Midnight, All the Agents. But is that the name of the chapter here? At Midnight, All the Agents. It's a little fragment of a Bob Dylan song called Desolation Row. We're going to take a look at that. I think the problem I'm having is I don't know where to start, so I'm just going to start. Gatorade bottle. Yeah, I just need to tape one to the inside of my leg, but then it's sort of like, I feel like I need a seal. I feel like I need a tether and a seal. I shouldn't have said that. So, one of the things that is happening or has happened in Watchmen is there's this thing called the Keene Act, and I'm not gonna to talk about it too much right now is a tiny bit of a spoiler, but it's explained a bit later in the in chapter 6 or 7, like that. But basically, the Keene Act, the Watchmen are sort of in hiding. Superheroes, masked heroes. It's illegal to be one anymore. It's basically illegal to practice vigilantism or vigilantism, however you want to pronounce it. I think it's vigilantism. Can't be a masked vigilante anymore. And I think it's really summed up by something. Do I want to show this yet? Yeah, I will show this. Let's see. I want to go here, here, here. This will explain.
The Keene Act and You, a public service film on behalf of the House Committee on Un-American...
Restart. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go.
The Keene Act and You, a public service film on behalf of the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Since the dawn of this great nation, our American way of life has been safeguarded by noble patriots. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, Richard Nixon. But nearly 40 years ago, a strange new breed of patriot appeared on our streets. Costumed adventurers, men and women who took the law into their own hands. At first, we applauded their actions, but it soon became clear that their masks concealed more than just their identities. Today, they are succeeded by dangerous, violent vigilantes who have appointed themselves judge, jury, and executioner. This is vigilantism in America today. Now you, the public, have spoken. And Senator John Keene, one hero who doesn't need to wear a mask, is listening. Like you, he knows real American heroes are the brave family men risking their lives every day to serve and protect. Men whose livelihoods are threatened and undermined by the costumed menace.
Sorry, honey.
Thanks to Senator Keene's emergency legislation, America's masked adventurers are now outlawed. With immediate effect, the following rules are in place for your protection to ensure that you do not become another victim of vigilante crime. No masks, no capes, no gadgets or experimental weapons, no dangerous unlicensed vehicles. If you suspect anyone of being a masked vigilante, under no circumstances should you attempt to confront or apprehend them. Simply remain inside your home. Secure all doors and windows, and notify the police immediately. Remember, Being vigilant is not a crime. Being a vigilante is. Together, we can forge a better America.
So I think that features some still shots and stuff that was actually from the movie. I think that movie was actually made by Warner Brothers as some of the supporting stuff. It might be on one of the DVDs. I'm not quite sure. But the funny thing I find about that, well, there's a couple things. One, there's the shot of Rorschach sort of walking at a slightly oblique angle away from the camera, and he looks back, and it looks like that Sasquatch video from the 70s. I love the cop at the table whose wife brings the empty plate to him, like surprise. The masked people are taking food off your plate. You're not a man. Go get us some. It's like, hey, honey, why don't you go get us a turkey pot pie? Honey, where's my super suit? And then the Keene Act: no masks, no capes, no experimental weapons or vehicles. I've known plenty of people who don't wear a mask or a cape, and certainly don't have the money or the time or the research and manufacturing capability to have experimental weapons or vehicles. But they've had a vigilante attitude towards all kinds of things. I'm related to some of them. Some of them maybe watch. Actually, any relative of mine that's watching this jackassery is probably not one of those people. But you know, they're in the family. As he goes over to Facebook to see which family members might actually be watching. None. Okay, here we go. So so I think that was made as part of the marketing material, either for the movie itself, or DVD releases, or it's on YouTube. And I'll put the link to that. I'll put the link to everything we look at out on Facebook. Actually, I'll put it on Discord, which is the official repository. Discord, the official repository of Barnham Book Club, as he realizes he doesn't have the link available. And I'm not sure the Discord command actually works in Mixer. So I'll just do that over here. I'll do this over here. We'll do a little mic check. There we go. Earl Cotton Bailey is in the other room. Well, you let me know when he gets in the room you're in. I don't know why I said that. Is he in the other room because he's being punished? I have a feeling. Anyway, it's none of my business. It's not a damn bit of my business why Earl Cotton Bailey's in the other room. So if you're on Discord, head over there, and you can get all the links to all this stuff later on. Adjective, it has that. I see what you tried to do there, and it has it crossed out. It does take almost a full half hour. The first chapter of the first half hour of the movie only gets to about the first chapter of the book. I think it does sort of go to chapter 2 a little bit to bring things in, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, the film for 10 years. Oh, you deleted. Okay, got it. The film for 10 years, was considered unfilmable, and Alan Moore, and I haven't verified this as an Alan Moore quote, but Alan Moore was quoted as saying, I haven't validated the quote, but he was quoted as saying that he intended when he made this, when he wrote this, and when Dave Gibbons did the art for it, they intended for it to be unfilmable. I don't really think anything in a written format is unfilmable. Whether it makes a good film or not is one thing, but unfilmable, I don't quite buy into that all that much. So, Watchmen. Chapter 1, we have what is essentially 50 years of history of masked heroes fighting crime and doing things. I don't want to spoil too much of what's to come, but 50 years of folks putting on the mask and going out to fight crime. And I think fight crime should be in quotes there, because a lot of the folks in the story, they're not really out there to fight crime. They're really just out there to, hey, I have some compulsive, obsessive need to control things, including other people. And if I put a mask on and, walk around under the illusion that I'm fighting crime, I can do all kinds of other stuff. I'm talking mostly about Rorschach and the comedian. The comedian is definitely not a nice guy. And I think, is it in chapter 1 that he has his moral lapse, as it's described by Rorschach with Silk Spectre? I feel like I'm talking in riddles now. So I think this is in chapter 1. So I'm just going to say it. Actually, I'm going to scroll up here to about page 20 in Scribd. Here, let me do this. Boom, boom, boom. Get rid of our title here. Let's see. I think you can see why this is not necessarily a good thing to watch on a laptop. It's just, I guess I could zoom out some. I'm trying to figure out if chapter 1 is where the comedian... I don't want to spoil stuff, but I feel like I need to talk about some things. I made this comment that... here, let me couch it in this language. As I continue to keep scrolling. The comedian. Here's a list of things that put him in the definitely not a nice guy category. He sexually assaults Silk Spectre. The only reason he doesn't get away with it is Hooded Justice intervenes. Hooded Justice being another character. The comedian shoots the mother of his child in the face. He's also likely committed a number of atrocities on other civilians in Vietnam during that conflict. And I don't know if this is covered in the comic, but in the opening sequence of the movie, it's the comedian who's firing on Kennedy from the grassy knoll. So it's the comedian is definitely not a nice person. He's not a good guy at all, but he wears a mask and fights crime. And over the 50-year history that has come before October 12, 1985, which is the opening night of Watchmen, the masked heroes have gone from crime fighters, doing good, having a positive image, to something that people are kind of tired of, people are a little afraid of, because the folks stepping over the line of what is good conduct, their acts and actions are starting to skew towards the that's some abominable horse shit you're doing right there. So Congress gets involved and passes the Keene Act, and masked vigilantes, as they are defined under the Keene Act. It is illegal to practice vigilantism. You cannot be a vigilante. That was probably considered very edgy at the time for superhero media. Now everything is gritty, dark, and about deconstruction. I agree with that, and I think one of the things that Alan Moore was trying to do was trying to take a look at, what is a hero and what is definitely not a hero. And he was the first person who was shining a light on the fact that just because you wear a mask and you're doing, just because you're a masked crusader doesn't mean you're a good person. And then he's wrestling with that whole, where is the line? Does the line move? Does it matter? Is there any such thing as redemption? I think for the comedian, there's really no such thing as redemption for the comedian, but there's something a little further down the line that why is he killed, I think will come into play a little more. Try not to get myself in trouble with spoilers or being okay with the comedian's actions. And I think, you guys are looking at this like, you don't care about chat. We'll go back over here. I think that one black guy, I think it is chapter 2 that we get into that stuff. So I'm just going to do a quick, let's see, I'm going down through. Oh, I wanted to point out one other thing that you could use as a source. So Warner Brothers has produced all 12 chapters of Watchmen as motion graphics. And I'm just going to fire this up. And actually I'll do... I think this one will be a little bit... the audio on this one will be a little quiet. But what Warner Brothers did... They took the graphic novel and turned it into motion graphics. This is another way to consume Watchmen that you will get the story elements, you will get the story, whether it's
Rorschach's Journal,
true,
October 12th,
what's in the graphic
1985.
novel or not is a little
Dog
different
carcass in
because
alley this
it's an
morning,
entirely
tired tread on
different
burst stomach.
artist.
This
Slightly
city is
entirely
afraid of
different
me.
medium
I have seen its true face.
from the graphic
The
novel
streets
that
are extended gutters, and the
I
gutters
think
are full of
it
blood.
works
And when
a
the
little
drains
bit,
finally scab
but
over,
some of my
all
problem
the
is,
vermin will
and
drown.
I'm
The accumulated
envisioning this
filth of all
conversation
their sex and
where
murder will
in the
foam
Warner-
up
in the Warner
above
Brothers
their
room,
waists,
in a
and
meeting
all the
somewhere,
whores and
someone is like,
politicians
we're
will
paying
look
you to
up
create
and
a
shout,
motion graphic of this.
"Save us!"
There can't
and
be
I'll
a
look
second
down and
of
whisper,
stillness in this.
"No."
So when you're watching this, there's never a still moment anywhere.
Poor guy.
Either the
I always
frame or
wonder,
the camera.
You think you black out
as
before
it
you
were,
hit the
is
sidewalk
moving.
or what?
There's either
Frankly,
something
I
moving
don't need
in
to
the
know
image,
that bad.
or
What do you think happened here? Well, looks
dialogue
like
is
someone
popping
broke
up.
in by busting this door
There's
down.
one guy reading
That
all
would
the
take
voices,
two
male,
guys
female,
or one
doesn't
guy
matter.
on serious
He's
drugs
reading,
because the
everyone's
door had a
voices, and
chain fastened
he
on the
does
inside, which
an
means
okay
that the
job,
occupant
but
was
his
home
range
when it happened.
Isn't very good. It's sort of
Yeah, I saw the body, and he looked beefy enough to
it's an
protect
okay way
himself. I mean, this
to,
guy, this Blake guy, he had
lean
muscles
back
like a weightlifter.
and
He would have put up some kind of
listen
fight,
to
I'm
and
certain.
watch the story.
Yeah,
But I
well,
don't think
looks like he lost.
you're
Data we
certainly
have
not
suggests
going to
he's been
linger
doing some sort of
over any
overseas
given
diplomatic
panel.
work
And I
for
think,
years.
if anything,
a lot of classy,
and this goes
expensive
something
kind of
to
living.
what
Maybe he
Earl
just
Cotton
got
Bailey
soft.
and I had a little private chat offline yesterday.
Hey,
It took him, I think he
the
said
guy
three
he's shaking
attempts
hands with
over
in
the
the
course
picture?
of a
It's
year,
Vice
maybe
President Ford.
even
I
longer,
think we
to
can
actually
rule
get
him
through
out as a
Watchmen.
suspect. A
And
job like
he said
this
it's not a
just isn't
page
his
turner.
style.
And I agree. Watchmen is not a
A
page
little money
turner.
got stolen, but no way is this a
And I
straight burglary.
think that's
Somebody really
possibly
had it in for this guy.
the point and one of its best things. I think Watchmen.
I mean, how did he
you
go
know,
out
if,
of the
if you
window?
want to pick up a comic
Maybe
or a
he
graphic
tripped
novel and
against
just blow your way
it.
through
Forget
it, you can do that with
It's
Watchmen.
strong
But I think
glass,
you're going to
man.
miss a lot
I
of
think
stuff.
it
Hey,
had
Goldie.
control.
Thanks for joining and thanks for hosting.
Which floor you on? Ground
And, I
floor,
suppose that
please.
could be said for
Ground
anything. You could
floor.
blow through
Coming
any
up.
novel. Yep, I know what's happening here. I know the story.
Let's not raise too much dust
But I
over
think,
this one.
hey, Token.
We don't need any masked Avengers getting interested in cutting in.
I'm just going to get off that media. because I was just wanting to show it. It's a different way of enjoying the story. It's a different way of consuming the story that I realize I don't have that link ready to go. It's another way of consuming the story that I don't think works, and it's certainly not going to. You're not going to get as deep of a dive. Hey everybody that's just joined, thanks for joining. Talking about Watchmen. So here's what we know. Chapter 1, and I'm just going to go from memory here. The comedian, who is a when the story opens, we don't know anything about the comedian's past and all the bad crap that he's done. We just know the comedian has been murdered, and we don't know who's done it. And the police are on the case, but they don't know Edward Blake's true identity. They just think it's a guy who, that apartment that he's in is pretty nice. They just know he's murdered. It could have been a break-in turned into a murder, but the police are on the case, at least from a paperwork standpoint. And then it's Rorschach shows up to do, the real investigation, as only Rorschach can do it. And we get our first tastes of Rorschach as sort of just everything's in black and white. There's nothing happy in Rorschach's view of the world. Rorschach, I think, is Rorschach's the kind of guy who I think the comedian's the guy who walks into an elementary school and does a bunch of stuff. I don't think Rorschach does that. Anyway, going to get myself in trouble. And Rorschach knows Edward Blake's true identity. He knows him as a comedian, and Rorschach immediately thinks somebody's gunning for us. Somebody knows who we are, and for whatever reason, the Watchmen and the Minutemen, somebody's coming after us. So Rorschach goes on a couple of paying visits to old friends, old people that he teamed up with in the past, to say, hey, I just want you to know, the comedian's dead. Somebody knows who some of us are. So be warned. And I think Rorschach, even though he wouldn't say this in chapter 1, I think he's trying to get the band back together. And the problem with Rorschach doing that is everybody knows Rorschach, he's not a band leader. He's kind of the loner. And him getting the band back together, I wonder what kind of band it would be. It would probably be synth pop. I'm kidding. I don't know. So Rorschach's going around trying to get the band back together, and we get an introduction to all of the characters. Yep. He's also the kind of guy who Rorschach's. So in case you didn't see it on Facebook, that one black guy said Rorschach is both loose cannon detective and grizzled veteran rolled into one. I also think he's the guy that will never pick up the check when everybody goes out to dinner. And if everybody's supposed to chip in, he for some reason he's in the bathroom, or he's killing dogs down in the alley somewhere. He's never around when the bill comes. If I would like to see a crossover, the Blues Brothers Watchmen. I have no idea what the story would be. But when did Blues Brothers come out? 81? 79? I'm going to look it up really quick. Where do the Blues Brothers exist in the Watchmen? Isn't it too cold for this tiny little insect to be flying around? Oh, it's a spider. He's a tiny thing. I think he's building a web here. I'm just going to let him go. Blues Brothers, 1980. Our story takes place in 85. So, perfect room for some crossover. All right, let's see. Chewing Gum and Horseshit. And then Blues Brothers, Watchmen. I'm writing it down like I'm going to create an entirely new TV show pilot that I'm going to write and move down to LA for 6 months and try and pitch, and then end up sleeping on someone's couch until I've worn out my welcome. And they're like, I almost said my real name. Until they say, Big Ed, you're an alcoholic. Yeah, big spoiler alert. It's not my real name. Anyway, back to the future Watcherman. I think Watcherman is something else. Anyway, if you're just joining us, I'm babbling about Watchmen Chapter 1, and I don't think I'm doing a very good job of it. So I think in a broad brushstroke, I've covered a lot of what Chapter 1 is about, and I'm just going through here. The comedian's been murdered. We get an introduction to, I think, everyone who is a Watchman. We get an introduction to folks who were the Minutemen, largely Hollis Mason. I don't think we've seen Silk Spectre's mother just yet. But we get a sense that there were folks in the 30s and 40s, the Minutemen, who were, I'm just going to say, masked heroes. Masked Heroes comes with some baggage because we do know that there's some nastiness, criminal activity within the Masked Hero group. We know that there's the Minutemen in the 30s, 40s, into the 50s, and then as the that group ages off, or some of them get killed, the Watchmen come into play. And the comedian, during the Minutemen era, he's very young. He's the youngest member of the Minutemen, and his work spans both groups. So he was in the original Minutemen, and then he's a Watchman as well. And then the Keene Act is passed, and then he retires. The Keene Act is passed, and most of them retire. Ozymandias reveals his identity and becomes a rich entrepreneur in manufacturing, engineering, and whatnot. Dan Dryberg, who is the Night Owl 2, keeps his identity hidden, as does Laurie. I can't remember Laurie's last name, but she's largely kept her identity hidden. Dr. Manhattan really can't hide his identity. Everybody knows who he is, but they also know that he's laid down the work of being a masked vigilante. And I think, am I leaving someone out? Rorschach, who has refused to take off the mask, as it were. All of that's in Chapter 1. And I'm just going to keep checking in with chat here. I'm in horology. Horology, you mean? Do you guys already do East of Eden? We've not done East of Eden. Which, token, if you weren't falling down as a viewer, you would have heard me talk for 30 minutes last week about East of Eden. Horse shit! I'm kidding. East of Eden has its own treatment and possible book club later in the summer. It'll be stand by. Where's East of Eden? It's just a little east of Monterey. That's where Eden is, anyway. Horse shit. Just checking a couple things here, making sure we still got some signal here and there. Everything's looking good. Everything's looking good in terms of... sorry, I'll just stop that. So a couple things. Let's see. I've talked about the motion comic. I've talked about the Keene Act. I have not put links out for those things yet. I will be sure to put those on Discord. I think, the funny thing about Dr. Manhattan is all three guys from Blue Man Group could call in sick, and he could actually fill in for all three. The problem with Dr. Manhattan filling in for Blue Man Group, he's not very funny. He doesn't really have a sense of humor. Actually, I think he does sort of have a couple of jabs here and there. Mr. Manhattan, Token, that's Doctor to you. Sorry. So I think I'm going to share this now. If you were on the stream a little earlier, you heard, you folks know that I love going to estate sales and whatnot. And I went to an estate sale here in Portland. And back in the 90s, there was a masked hero running around Portland called Tin Horn. I don't know how he got the name. I should go back and do a little more research. But at an estate sale, this is about a couple weeks ago. This is before I realized... this is before I realized I was going to do the Watchmen thing. And I picked this up. This is a set. I think this is about 2 years worth of the Tin Horn's journals. And he was only active for about 4 years. So I think this is about half of his journals. And I'm just going to pick one seemingly at random and go through this here. It looks like he liked field notes, notebooks. They're perfectly good notebooks. Actually, I think all of these are field notes. Anyway, so he kept a journal, much like Rorschach. And, I think there's at least 4 journal entries in Chapter 1 from Rorschach. So this is a random one. I'm just going to go to a random entry here. Bangkok, Thailand, Incheon, Vietnam, Narita, San Francisco, San Diego, Lexington, Atlanta, Austin, Lima, Cusco. Oh, it looks like he's rated every airport that he's been in on a scale of 1 to 5. Dallas-Fort Worth gets a 1. Sorry, my friends in Texas. Phoenix doesn't get a rating yet. What's he rate a 5? Oh, Incheon in Seoul, Korea gets a 5. Burbank. Why would Burbank Airport get a 4 out of a 5? I don't know. Anyway, so this is journal. I'm just going to pick this at random here. Let's see. Tin Horn's Journal, June 8, 1993. Hang on, I need to do this because I heard an interview with Tin Horn once. Tin Horn's Journal, June 8, 1993. Hairball on the couch again. No indication of source. Could be any of the 3. This house is nothing but a haven of allergens, scratching posts, shredded cardboard, and the astringent smell of urine-soaked... Litter. Astringent smell of urine-soaked litter that I need to change. This whole apartment could become a litter box. Some days, I think I ought to let it become just that. A litter box. So, that's an excerpt from Tin Horn's Journal. I'll be sharing some more of these. What about Denver? Denver. Let's see if Denver Airport's on here. I do see Denver does not have a score. So here are the airports that Tin Horn has been to. Providence, Rhode Island, Baltimore, Phoenix, Arizona, Nashville, Tennessee, Detroit, Michigan, Denver, Colorado. Those are airports he's apparently been to, but he did not give them a rating. And as I said, Lima, Peru, Cusco, San Jose, Mexico City. It looks like his favorite airports are Narita Airport in Japan and Incheon Airport in Seoul, Korea. Tin Horn was a cat lover up to a point. So I'll share some more of that stuff as we go later on. So there's something that we should talk about fairly briefly. Let me get back on the the comic version on Scribd, which I'm not reading. I'm reading bona fide paper, which you could the comedian could kill someone with this book. I don't know why the comedian could kill someone with this book. One of the things that I think I like most about Watchmen, and this is something that changes format, I think, in a couple of different places under the book. Hollis Mason, who is the Night Owl in the Minutemen, which was formed, I think, 38, 39, did stuff on it through the 40s. The end of chapter 1, here, I'm going to go off camera here for a second. Chapter 1 has the first chapter of Hollis Mason's book, Under the Hood, which is his autobiography. And it has the first couple of chapters in here. Or is it just the first chapter itself? No, it has 2 chapters in here. And what I like about this is it gives Alan Moore another way of telling the story. Here, I'm going to do that one. Have a slightly smaller footprint here. The reason I like this is it gives Alan Moore another medium to play with. Straight narrative fiction. Straight narrative fiction in the form of autobiography. Does that make sense? Fake autobiography of a character. And this is the character that Dan Dryberg is talking to over beers early in chapter 1. And this is one of those things that I'm going to connect some dots for you. I'm going to run the risk of mansplaining to you. I'm just going to ramble about something that I find brilliant / fun / interesting / the reason why you can't just run roughshod through this thing and get through it. This chapter 1 basically tells Hollis Mason's story about him starting to tell his story. And I think it starts here in the first thing. The lady who works in the grocery store, my block, called Denise, who's a writer, says Hollis Mason's looking for advice on how to write. And she says, Denise says, start off with the saddest thing you can think of and get the audience's sympathies on your side. After that, believe me, it's a walk. So Hollis Mason basically tells the story of the saddest thing he can think of, and that is Ride of the Valkyries, which is that dun 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 dun. You know, it's in Apocalypse Now. It's Wagner's. It's one of Wagner's operatic works. It is in the movie in an oddly Vietnam War context. In the book, we won the Vietnamese War, the war against the Vietnamese, because we have Dr. Manhattan and the comedian over committing. Well, you know, they're kind of just over there committing war crimes until the Vietnamese are like, okay, that's enough. That's enough. I forgot why I went over on that. So Hollis Mason is Ride of the Valkyries. So the saddest thing Hollis Mason can think of is the Ride of the Valkyries. And he goes on to tell the story about how when he was young, he was working in an auto garage shop. I actually went, this auto garage is supposedly off of 7th Avenue. There are a couple of garages. I lived in New York for a while. And I was thinking there were a couple of garages around Chelsea down through West Village that were just off of 7th Avenue. So I spent a good 2 hours the other day on Google Street Maps looking for what I thought may have been the model that Alan Moore selected for this auto garage. I couldn't find it. And that's So a young Hollis Mason's working in an auto garage. It's run by Mo Vernon, and Mo Vernon loves opera, and one of the things he plays is Ride of the Valkyries, that music. And you can even see the gramophone over here. And this is a young Hollis Mason. This is Mo Vernon. I forget who this guy is. And the guy on the right is someone who's cheating with Mo Vernon's wife. So the saddest thing that Hollis Mason can think of is that song, because when and Mo Vernon, and I'm rambling here, Mo Vernon likes to play dumb practical jokes and do silly things, and he comes out of the office one day wearing a pair of fake breasts while Ride of the Valkyries is playing, sort of a proxy Valkyrie himself. And so there's that image. And then there's the image of when Mo finds out that his wife's been cheating on him with a mechanic that he pays, a mechanic in his Mo Vernon, while everyone's gone from the garage, starts up a car, runs a tube into his office, and he kills himself. So I have this image of Mo Vernon with fake breasts appearing as a Valkyrie. And if you know the story of Valkyries, there's Brunhilde. During that whole scene, they're escorting fallen, dead warriors up into Valhalla. So I have this image of Mo Vernon being both a warrior, because he's fighting the good fight. He's running a business. He's a good guy with a wife that he's supporting, and he's employing people. You know, he's a good guy. He's a warrior in some respect. He falls, and then he's also Brunhilde and or one of the other Valkyries ushering himself into Valhalla. I might just be full of horse shit, but that's what I take away from this. And so I actually went out and looked for photos of Brunhilde. And my favorite one, let me see if I get the right one here, is this cat wearing the winged helmet and the scale mail breastplate and the cape, Brunhilde. Actually, I used this photo on my Instagram account probably back in the summer. This is a photo, I think, from Bain News Service. This is from the Library of Congress. I think this photo is taken 1920 to 25. Anyway, I thought of Mo Vernon as a Valkyrie. It's 1938, 1939. This photo is very old. I just piece things together like this. And, you know, it is what it is. Those are just some of the thoughts I have on that. I'm going to check in with chat now. That one black guy said he just needed real breasts and he would still be alive. Okay. I like it. So that's one of the things that I think, you know, I first read, okay, it should be back up. I have no idea why that's happening. But it happens regularly enough now that I'm not going to say anything about it right now, but I'm definitely going to go on the support board for Restream and Switcher Studio to see what might be happening with that. We dropped audio. From now on, when that happens, just do what you just did. Just say, rest in peace, Big Ed's audio or something like that. I will stop the stream, restart it, and we'll keep going. What I was saying was, I think what I was saying was, I read Watchmen the first time. I think I put it to about 25 years ago, 1993, 1994. It had been out for a while, and the movie was not out at that time. But I connected way fewer dots. You know, I was 25 then. I connected way fewer dots. Let me just get over here on the chat, make sure. I connected way fewer dots. I think I've said it 4 times now. 5. I connected way fewer dots back then than I do now. 2 things. 1, I think when I was reading it the first time, I was probably just like, oh, I got to get through this thing. Oh, wait, there's 4 pages of nothing but text here. I'm not sure I read Hollis Mason's excerpts from the book when I first read the novel. How are we on audio? Did it come back? Let me see. Let me unmute myself here. All right. It's weird. It always cuts out right when I'm mentally thinking, maybe it's time to start wrapping this up and get off here. It happened the other night. Cole and I said I wasn't going to talk about it. Anyway. Wife from the kitchen. I hear you, Big Ed. Funny enough, I heard her as well. Is she making waffles? I just heard somebody say waffles are ready. I'm just wondering. Wondering if there's some sort of weird vortex in both of our kitchens where communication goes back. Anyway. So to Earl Cotton Bailey's point, it's not a page turner. And I think that's a good thing. Trying to think of what else I was going to say. It's not in chapter 1 because so chapter 1, comedian's dead. Rorschach goes around to all the other members of the Watchmen to say, hey, something's up. Somebody might be gunning for us. Somebody might know our true identities. Chapter 2, which I'm not going to go into very much at all, because we're going to talk about that next week, starts with the funeral of Eddie Blake, the comedian. And Laurie, Silk Spectre, 2, goes to see her mother, the original Silk Spectre. And one of the things, and I'm only bringing this up because I feel like it's been enough of a theme through our book club streams that I think I have to find a date on which to put this on the calendar. There's a Tijuana Bible that's mentioned in chapter 2 of Silk Spectre that Silk Spectre actually, a fan of hers, sent her. And if you don't know what a Tijuana Bible is, it's basically just a porno in exaggerated comic form. And I think we've mentioned them on every book club stream. I don't quite know what Tijuana Bible... there's a certain community standards, especially on Facebook, that I think we'd have to dance around a little bit. I think we'd probably have to figure out if it's appropriate on Mixer and YouTube as well. There's a certain way... I'm not sure we could actually just share the artwork of a Tijuana Bible on a live stream and get away with it. I think it's the kind of thing, and the idea that I had was, if I procure a few Tijuana Bibles, and I know where to get them, because I think I've mentioned Earl Cotton Bailey and Joe Frice. What I was thinking of doing was get a few examples of Tijuana Bibles and actually make copies and distribute them as PDFs to folks on the book club or who join regularly, so that we could, I could reference my copy and you could reference your copy, and we could, possibly land ourselves in federal court for passing pornography, through the U.S. mail. I'm pretty sure it's okay to send a Tijuana Bible through the mail. We'll find out. So the reason I thought of doing it with like a manual overlay, like one of these titles. I just create one of these titles that acts as an overlay. But then if I forget to put the overlay up when I'm sharing it, or depending on its position or whatnot, because some of those guys have huge Johnsons in a Tijuana Bible. So if the overlay isn't big enough, if you know what I mean, I'm awful. It may not work. So I think what I would probably do is create PDF versions of those and distribute those to electronically to folks. Actually, I wouldn't send it through. If it's a PDF, I wouldn't send it through the goddamn mail. Although if I'm ordering it, I'll figure it out. So anyway, and there's a little bit of the Tijuana Bible shown, I think, in Chapter 2 of the comic. I'll find out when I get off here. But I think we've mentioned Tijuana Bibles enough, and I have it down as a recurring note that I think I have to just pick a date, and I think it has to be, I don't think it can be next week, because I don't think I can get the stuff together fast enough to do it. And I think Tijuana Bibles probably are something that deserve their own full live stream. But I think I will send you a link on a postcard through the mail, and that postcard will just be a tiny URL, the shortened URL that you're supposed to go to. Forgot what I was saying. I think I have to put that on the calendar, which, since we're talking about Watchmen for the next 12 weeks, I'm also suddenly wondering, should we take 12 weeks? But that's what I said we were going to do, so we're going to do it. We'll talk about other stuff. So I think I feel like I need to put a Tijuana Bible live stream on the actual calendar. I think I would try to get Earl Cotton Bailey on a Discord call, possibly Joe Frice in the shed, to talk about Tijuana Bibles, to share in some form or fashion the collections that they have. But there's the community standards to dance around. There's all kinds of offensive stuff that you can see on a live stream or Facebook, or have people tweet at you. But as soon as you try to explore some type of art form and do it from critical standpoint, your account's banned. Your account's banned, and there's no arbitration or anything around it. So I think Tijuana Bibles are something that we're going to talk about on an actual live stream. Tijuana Bibles, Tin Horns Journal, the Keene Act, Desolation Row. We haven't talked about Desolation Row very much, and I think we're going to close on that. Desolation Row is it's the source of Chapter 1's title, At Midnight, All the Agents, and then it just ends. We can go through, let me see, let me go boom, boom, boom. Don't know if that's easy to see here. Let me just, so I'll just read the first verse. They're selling postcards of the hanging. They're painting the passports brown. The beauty parlor is filled with sailors. The circus is in town. Here comes the blind commissioner. They've got him in a trance. One hand is tied to the tightrope walker. The other is in his pants. And the riot squad, they're restless. They need somewhere to go, as Lady and I look out tonight from Desolation Row. If you know Bob Dylan at all, he's sort of, he's either the master of lyrics or the pastiche plagiarizer of lyrics. And there are people who go argue both sides of it. If you want an interesting read, Google Bob Dylan Moby Dick Nobel Prize essay. there are some folks that think Bob Dylan just took the not the Cliff's Notes. The what's the other one? I can't. There's basically there's another brand of Cliff's Notes. There are folks that have pointed out that a lot of Bob Dylan's Nobel Prize essay, his acceptance essay, plagiarizes the Cliff's Notes to Moby Dick, which I think is one. There are people who are paying enough attention that they picked up on it, and two, Bob Dylan doesn't have 3 different layers of filter, either in his own head or people that he works with to say, maybe take another pass at it. But Desolation Row, I think this song was recorded in '65, and just lyrically, it sort of, I think, paints a pretty good picture of just the different types of people that are in and around the Watchmen. And I think there's a reason why Alan Moore picked it, picked it as the source of the title for Chapter 1. And I'm not quite sure. I thought I had it. It's a long song. I think it's about 11 minutes long. It's definitely worth going to take a look at. It's definitely worth a listen. At midnight, all the agents and the superhuman crew come out and round up everyone that knows more than they do. Then they bring them to the factory where the heart attack machine is strapped across their shoulders, and then the kerosene is brought down from the castles by insurance men who go check to see that nobody is escaping from Desolation Row. I think it's pretty clear through all kinds of little contextual things that Alan Moore does not like the people that he's writing about. And I know that's a little weird that, one of the things that writers will talk about is like, they have to love their characters, whether the characters are good or bad. And I think Alan Moore has a love for these characters, but I think what he's saying is that these are not nice people. They're assholes for the most part. And I think this verse, sort of captures that quite a bit. And hence the reason that Chapter 1 is titled, At Midnight, All the Agents. I would play this song, but I have a feeling it would get immediately picked up on Facebook as copyright protected. Spark Notes, that's the one I was trying to think of. And Alan Moore does have a lot of opinions. Actually, I have a friend, when I was living in New York, this was 92, almost to 96. I had a friend who was an editor at DC Comics who went to London. And I don't remember if Alan Moore was winning an award or he was just at this event, this comics industry event. And I think this is right around the time that Alan Moore is also getting a little bit pissed off at DC and some of the other, well, I think mostly DC, at how the artists are treated and how the artists don't really own their work until certain number of things happen. We'll talk about that a little bit. But my friend Dan Raspler, he was an editor for Lobo and some other stuff. This stuff's... Anyway, met Alan Moore for a brief second and said, "Oh yeah, he's fucking crazy." So anyway, that was such a long build up for me just to, oh yeah, he's fucking crazy. Anyway, so I don't know, I don't quite know. So anyway, talking about opinions. One of the things when Alan Moore, and I'm trying to think what came first. I think Watchmen was the first. Watchmen precedes League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and V for Vendetta in terms of being made into movies. I think Watchmen was sold, and it got passed around Hollywood. Terry Gilliam was attached at one point. Someone else, another director, was attached at one point. But it was in pre-production at two different studios, and then was put in turnaround before Warner Brothers finally picked it up. And between Warner Brothers and DC, the way the contracts read, the intent is that DC and Warner Brothers, actually I believe DC is owned by Warner Brothers now, own the characters throughout the making of the film, own the characters in terms of merchandising and marketing and advertising and whatnot for a certain amount of time, and then the rights to the characters, the actual ownership of the characters would return to Alan Moore. The way the contracts are written, and something that Alan Moore has been very vocal about, is that the way the contracts are written, Alan Moore will never get those characters back. The riders to the contract, the terms of the contract are that if Warner Brothers does certain things through the certain course of time, they get exclusive rights to renew their ownership of those characters. And those things are easy for a studio with a lot of money to do. And I think the same V for Vendetta. I think League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I don't think Alan Moore owns those characters at all anymore. And total tangent. Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, they created Spinal Tap. They wrote and created those characters. They're the flip side of that. They own those characters, and their contracts stipulated that as long as they appeared and or performed and or something else as those characters every 2 years, 3 years, they renewed their rights to those characters, which is why after Spinal Tap, there was a couple of years that passed. I think they put out another album. I think they did a tour. They kept doing things so that the studios would not take over ownership of those Spinal Tap characters. So I don't know if it's Alan Moore just didn't have a very good attorney. It seems very unlikely that would be the case. It seems unlikely that he's naive. I find that very hard to believe. And I think we'll never quite know the truth, unless we somehow see the contracts. And then, by now there's multiple contracts, multiple properties. Alan Moore owns very little of the stuff that he created. And you'll notice, if you watch the opening credits to Watchmen, Alan Moore's name does not appear on it. He intentionally took off his name, and any money that he is rightfully entitled to, and any money that the studio does cut a check to him for, goes straight to Dave Gibbons. So while Alan Moore, martyrs himself, right or wrong, WikiLeaks does need to get on that. Whatever you think of Alan Moore, love him, hate him, you think he's crazy, you think it's part of the act, part of the image. It's Dave Gibbons. His kids are doing quite well. I think Dave Gibbons is doing pretty well. From Hell, I forgot From Hell. I think his name was taken off that. So I'm pretty sure if you were to watch today, it was Dave Gibbons divorced? Anyway, if you watch League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, From Hell, Watchmen, and V for Vendetta. If you watched all those today, even if all you did was watch the opening credits, I'm pretty sure Alan Moore's name does not appear anywhere, not even in a thank you in the credits. It'll say something like, based on the graphic novel co-created by Dave Gibbons. It'll say that. But who the other co-creator is, not mentioned. I think I've babbled enough. It is Sunday. Hopefully, I'm not a praying person, but I do pray that you have something else to do today that will bring you happiness. I feel like I'm signing off for the last time. I pray that you have something to carry you forward in your life. Anyway, just going to make sure, not missing anything. Fake bra and breasts. Mo is a Valkyrie and he's a wounded hero. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I think that's going to do it. I appreciate all of you joining us either on Facebook or on Mixer. We are streaming to YouTube, though I'm not actively tracking. The aggregated chat should show if anybody's dropping comments on YouTube, and I haven't seen that yet. I have about 4 or 5 links that I need to add to Discord. I will drop the Discord link again. I will drop those within the next 15-20 minutes so that you can pick those things up. The 2 videos that I showed today, the Keene Act, the motion graphic, I'll drop both of those, as well as there's a couple other things I wanted to drop. Anyway, that is going to do it for February 3rd, Watchmen Chapter 1. I hope I've done a service to this book. I hope you've taken something from it. I hope to have... I forgot to mention this. I mentioned this to some folks on Discord. Mentioned it on Discord. I will be having some special guests. I will be having some masked vigilantes appear on this very stream, not next week. I have 4 masked vigilantes who have agreed to appear on the stream. The dates have not been confirmed yet, but I will certainly let you know who they are. Not their real identities, but certainly let you know who they are and when they're going to appear on the stream. Anyway, I hope you have taken something from this. I am Big Ed Barnham. I love you all very much. Thank you very much.